London, 2010. Above a bakery in King's Cross, three men gathered in a cramped office. The room smelled of yeast and coffee, but what they were needing upstairs was far more ambitious than bread. Demis Hassabis, the prodigy chess player turned neuroscientist, had brought two unusual allies to this table. Shane Legg, the quiet mathematician from New Zealand who believed intelligence could be captured in code, and Mustafa Suleyman, the activist and policy thinker who saw technology as both promise and peril. Together, they would build DeepMind Technologies, a company whose vision was nothing less than creating artificial general intelligence, machines that could learn and reason as flexibly as humans. The story of DeepMind is often told through Hassabis. But behind the headlines, two men carved their own arcs, their lives reshaped by the deal with Google that made them wealthy and influential, and by the choices they made as the world edged closer to the age of thinking machines. Shane Legg was born in New Zealand, far from the bustling tech hubs of Silicon Valley. He was not a showman, not a political player. He was, above all else, a thinker. As a young man, he pored over the writings of Marcus Hutter, the German computer scientist whose work on algorithmic information theory described a theoretical measure of intelligence. The concept fascinated Shane. Intelligence wasn't magic. It could be defined, measured, perhaps even built. While others around him talked of startups and quick fortunes, Shane buried himself in papers on probability, induction, and the limits of computation. He pursued a PhD at the Dalmal Institute for Artificial Intelligence in Switzerland, where his thesis explored universal measures of intelligence. It was an abstract path, more philosophy than code, but Shane believed these ideas could one day guide the construction of real thinking machines. Colleagues thought him intense, perhaps even eccentric. He kept notebooks filled with equations and spent long nights tracing the logic of intelligence through the corridors of mathematics. But he was patient. He believed the world would catch up. Mustafa Suleyman's path could not have been more different. Born in London to a British mother and a Syrian father, he grew up in a household of contrasts, cultural, political, and economic. His father worked as a taxi driver. His mother was a nurse. From an early age, Mustafa felt the weight of injustice. He saw inequality not as an abstraction, but as lived reality. While studying at Oxford, he dove into philosophy and politics, but soon abandoned the ivory tower to do something more concrete. At just 19, he co-founded Muslim Youth Helpline, a nonprofit that provided counseling and crisis support. He worked with Amnesty International, advised the mayor of London, and became known as a skilled negotiator in policy and conflict resolution. His world was not equations and algorithms, but people and power. If Shane was the theorist of DeepMind, Mustafa would become its conscience and its connector, the one who translated grand technical visions into relationships with investors, governments, and eventually Google itself. It was Demis Hassabis who drew them together. A prodigy in chess and games, Demis had already built and sold a video game company, studied neuroscience, and was now looking to tackle the grand question of artificial intelligence. In Shane, he found a theorist who could ground the dream in mathematics. In Mustafa, he found someone who could build bridges between research and business, between ambition and society. Above the bakery, they sketched out their mission. It wasn't just another startup. It was a moonshot to build general-purpose AI that could master any domain, not just narrow tasks. They worked late into the night, surviving on takeaway food and endless debate. Shane argued for rigor and long-term safety. Mustafa pushed for practical steps, funding, and ethical frameworks. Demis stitched it together into a unified vision. DeepMind was born. By 2012, DeepMind's demos began to circulate among insiders. Their reinforcement learning algorithms taught themselves to play Atari games, at first clumsy, then shockingly competent. When the program discovered the tunnel strategy in Breakout, digging a path through the bricks to unleash an unstoppable stream of the ball, observers realized this was something new. Investors noticed. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel became early backers. But the real hunters were the tech giants. The bidding war began quietly. Facebook wanted them. So did other players. But it was Google that came armed with both cash and compute power. In 2014, the deal closed. Google acquired DeepMind for around $500 million. Overnight, the three founders became wealthy men. Shane, the quiet theorist, and Mustafa, the activist-turned-businessman, were now multimillionaires. But more than money, the acquisition gave them resources, access to Google's data centers, engineers, and global platform. DeepMind would remain in London, relatively independent, but its reach would extend across Alphabet's empire. Within Google, Mustafa carved out a role that was unusual for a co-founder. He focused on ethics, governance, and external relations. He pushed for DeepMind to create an ethics board, warning of the dangers of misaligned AI. He was outspoken, sometimes clashing with corporate culture. To some, he was the conscience of DeepMind. To others, a gadfly who slowed things down. But he understood something vital. The power they were unleashing could not be left unchecked. Later, he would move into roles bridging AI policy and corporate strategy, eventually joining Google leadership and later co-founding Inflection AI. His career traced a line from activism to the very heart of Silicon Valley's power structures. Shane remained quieter, more in the background, but those who knew him recognized his influence. His early writings on AI safety, warning that advanced AI could pose existential risks, were taken more seriously as DeepMind's systems advanced. While Demis led research and Mustafa navigated politics, Shane embodied the philosophical backbone, a reminder that the quest for general intelligence wasn't just a technical challenge, but a civilizational gamble. When AlphaGo defeated Lee Sedol in 2016, the headlines focused on Demis. But Shane and Mustafa were there too, watching as years of vision materialized into a single transcendent moment. For Shane, it was proof that intelligence could indeed be captured in algorithms. For Mustafa, it was a glimpse of both promise and peril, the kind of event that would force governments and societies to pay attention. The Google acquisition had made them wealthy, but AlphaGo made them historical figures in the story of AI. After years at DeepMind, their paths diverged. Mustafa moved further into policy and entrepreneurship, founding Inflection AI to build conversational AI assistants and arguing publicly about regulation and ethics. Shane remained closer to the shadows, but his ideas continued to echo in debates over AI safety. His early warnings about existential risk were cited by researchers and policymakers grappling with the rapid rise of large language models. Both men, in different ways, had become fixtures in the unfolding drama of artificial intelligence, a drama that would define not just industries, but perhaps the trajectory of humanity itself. The bakery below that first office has long since changed hands. Few who buy their morning loaf know that above their heads, a handful of dreamers once mapped the future. Demis Hassabis is remembered as the face of DeepMind, but alongside him stood Shane Legg, the theorist who believed intelligence could be defined, and Mustafa Suleyman, the activist who believed it must be governed. The Google deal gave them wealth. Their work gave them influence. Together, they became part of a story far larger than themselves. The moment when machines began to learn, and humanity was forced to ask what it meant to share the world with them. The chessboard, the equations, the protests, the policies, all the roads that led them there, converged above a bakery in London. And from that unlikely place, a quiet revolution began.